أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I also congratulate you on the birth of Al-Imam al-Ra'uf, Al-Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam, as these days mark the day of his birth. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us his ziyarah and also his shafa'ah. Secondly, I'd like to congratulate you on the launch of the YouTube channel. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you for this amazing effort. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide many people through these beautiful efforts. And finally, I'd like to thank our dear brother, and I'm so honored, so happy when I see the youth stepping up to the plate, taking the initiative, and being trained to be the leaders of our community in the future, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala support you and strengthen you to better serve his cause. And inshallah, this would encourage other youth to step up to the plate and also take an active role. In our discussion this evening, my dear brothers and sisters, we will examine the life and biography of Al-Imam Ja'far ibn Mohammed al Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi. Previously, we examined the life of his father, Al-Imam al-Baqer alayhi salam, and the contributions that Al-Imam al-Baqer brought forth to humanity. Al-Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam continued the legacy of Al-Imam al-Baqer in establishing that amazing university of knowledge and scholarship in the school of Ahlul Bayt. Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam has been so instrumental in the religious sciences, in theology, in fiqh, Islamic law, such that today and throughout history, the Shia have been known as the Ja'faris. We are called, our madhab, our school of thought is called the Ja'fari. You know how you have the schools of thought, the Hanafi, the Maliki, the Shafi'i, the Hanbali. Historically, we are known as the Ja'faris. Why? Because Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam played such a significant role in establishing the foundations of this school of thought, the foundations of the university of Ahlul Bayt. And therefore, Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam left a permanent, infinite impact on Muslims and on every human being throughout history. Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was such an amazing teacher that you find the leaders of other schools of thought, they only became leaders and they only became educated in Islamic law and theology by studying under Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Two of them, of the leaders of the other madahib, directly studied under Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. The first of them is Abu Hanifa al-Nu'man ibn Thabit. Abu Hanifa is the leader of the Hanafi school of thought. Tens of millions of Muslims throughout history have followed the school of thought. He studied for at least 2 years under Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And he famously stated, لَوْلَا السَّنَتَانِ لَهَلَكَ النُّعْمَانِ. If it weren't for those 2 years that I studied under Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, I would have perished. I could not have achieved what I achieved. You also have Al-Imam Malik ibn Anas. He is the leader of the Maliki school of thought. He directly studied under Al-Imam Ja'far al Sadiq alayhi salam. Al-Imam al-Sadiq gave rise to scholarship. Thousands of scholars studied under him, and he really started a revolution, a scientific religious revolution. Every Muslim today is indebted to the contributions of Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. But I tell you, my dear brothers and sisters, I'll be very open about this. Many Muslims throughout history have forgotten the role of Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. Are they truly grateful that Allah has blessed this ummah with such a leader? Or have we neglected and marginalized and sidelined the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, especially an Imam like Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam? You know what's really so tragic, sad, and heart-wrenching? You have the book of Bukhari, which was authored after the era of Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. Bukhari narrates hadiths from the students and the students of the students of Imam al Sadiq. But not one single narration do you find in Bukhari from Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam, when he is the leader of the leaders of the schools of thought, when he is the foremost teacher. Bukhari narrates from the students of Imam al Sadiq, but not Imam al Sadiq. He made it a point not to narrate a single hadith from this grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is very unfortunate, my dear brothers and sisters. When you have such a pure source of knowledge, why not go to the source? We, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, we are honored to seek the knowledge from a teacher, from a leader like Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. So Imam al Sadiq played a very important historic role in solidifying the foundations of knowledge. Now, Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam, the reason why he had some relative freedom to preach and teach was because he witnessed the downfall of the Umayyad dynasty and the rise of the Abbasid dynasty. At the time of Imam al Sadiq, the Umayyads had become very corrupt. For decades, they were spreading their corruption. They would kill innocent lives. They had no regard for values, for humanity. And the people were fed up with that. They were very mischievous. So a number of revolutions were led against the Umayyads. For instance, one of them was led by Zayd ibn Ali. Zayd is the son of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. He led a revolution against the Umayyads because he could no longer bear the corruption that they were spreading. He rose to fight them, and they mercilessly killed him, and they crucified his body. They kept his body hanging for 4 years. That's how cruel they were, imagine. So these revolutions, like the revolution of Zayd ibn Ali, they accelerated the downfall of the Umayyads. Now, at the same time, you had the Abbasids who were calling on the masses to stand with the family of the Prophet and fight the Umayyads. Imam al-Sadiq was told by some of his companions, why don't you join this movement? Let's rise, let's fight. Don't you see the Abbasids, your cousins? Because the Abbasids, they come from the line of Al-Abbas. He's the uncle of the Prophet. They come from his progeny. They told him, don't you see that your cousins are fighting for the family of the Prophet? So why don't you join? The Imam said, no, I'm not going to join. I'll tell you why. These Abbasids are not sincere. They just want the power to themselves. They don't care about us, the Ahlul Bayt, the descendants of the Prophet. I'm not going to be deceived and fooled by their slogans. But there were many people who were fooled by the slogans of the Abbasids, because their slogans were slogans of justice. Yes, down with the Umayyads and their corruption. Let the family of the Prophet rule. And many people supported those slogans, but little did they know what the Abbasids had in mind. So Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam told his companions, don't get involved. And that's exactly what happened. The day that the Abbasids came to power, they started persecuting the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. And the descendants of the Prophet Mohammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the descendants of Imam Ali and Lady Fatima. In one night, they would slaughter 60 Alawis who come from the line of Imam Ali and Lady Fatima. So we find that Imam al Sadiq witnessed the downfall of the Umayyads and the rise of the Abbasids. So he relatively, for some years, had freedom to preach the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. And Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam lived for 15 years under the guidance of his grandfather, Al-Imam Zayn al-Abidin. When he was 15, Al-Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam was martyred. So he lived with his grandfather, Zayn al-Abidin. That's because Al-Imam al-Sadiq was born on the 17th day of Rabi' al-Awwal, which is also the same day of the Prophet's birthday, according to our narrations, in the year 80 of the Hijrah, according to many narrations. So he witnessed Al-Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. He was educated by Imam Zayn al-Abidin. But then his foremost teacher was his father, Al-Imam al-Baqer salawatullahi alayhi. At age 11, imagine, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, at age 11, he's still young. He's just embracing his teenage years. And Imam al-Baqer would teach him every field of knowledge and science. Not only the religious sciences, but even the natural sciences, astronomy. Do you know Imam al-Baqer would teach his son, Imam al-Sadiq, astronomy? He would teach him the natural sciences, biology, chemistry. And that's why Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he also had students in these fields, my dear brothers and sisters. And Imam al-Sadiq did not only focus on the religious sciences, the Imam dedicated some of his time to the natural sciences. One of his foremost students was Jabir ibn Hayyan. Jabir was a scholar in the natural sciences, specifically chemistry and alchemy. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam would teach him chemistry. And do you know, my dear brothers and sisters, that today modern chemistry would not have reached what it reached today if it were not for the research and the works of Jabir ibn Hayyan? Until today, manuscripts from his work have survived in Europe, in museums, in scientific places. Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam had another companion by the name of Al-Mufaddal. The Imam offered him lessons in biology. If you're interested in biology, you're studying pre-med, read the book of Al-Mufaddal, my dear brothers and sisters. See how Imam al-Sadiq examines each body part. And what's the function of this body part? In an era that people did not know much about some of these internal organs, the Imam talks about it. The Imam gives him a lesson in biology. It's fascinating. So Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was indeed a fascinating scholar, an amazing teacher. He primarily would teach in Medina, but also in Kufa. For a short period of time, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was summoned to Kufa. And over there, he had the opportunity to teach. One beautiful lesson that we learn from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam is that sometimes if certain conditions are imposed on you, always look at the bright side. If they exile you, you can break down and say, oh, this is unfortunate. I'm away from my homeland. And basically you shut down. Not at Imam al-Sadiq. Okay, you exile me to Kufa, I'll start a university in Kufa. And that's what he did. That's one reason why the top companions of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, such as Zurara, such as Muhammad ibn Muslim, they come from Kufa. Because the Imam had an opportunity to teach them there. So the Imam is credited with formalizing and fully establishing the first official Islamic university in history. Over 4,000 students graduated from this amazing university, my dear brothers and sisters. We must appreciate the legacy of Imam al-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi. When you examine his companions, we find that the companions of Imam al-Sadiq would specialize in various fields. For instance, Zurara and Muhammad ibn Muslim, They were scholars in law, in Islamic law. And a marja today studies Islamic law, right? A marja is one who's an expert in fiqh, which is jurisprudence and Islamic law. These two companions of Imam al Sadiq, they specialized in Islamic law. The Imam would teach them laws of fiqh that are fascinating. The Imam wanted to train his companions to become scholars, because sometimes people would come to Imam al Sadiq. They would tell him, Imam, not always do we have access to you. What do we do? The Imam would tell them, go to my companions who are educated, who know the system, and take your rulings from them. We see the Imam beautifully preparing this ummah to follow qualified scholars and experts. So the Imam would teach them general principles. They could use these principles, my dear brothers and sisters, to extract Islamic laws. I'll share with you one of those interesting laws. The Imam states a hadith to one of his companions, Zurara. It's only 4 words in Arabic, but my dear brothers and sisters, this law is so deep from a legal perspective, so amazing. Scholars today are able to extract thousands of rulings from this one statement by Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. The Imam tells his companion, after he asks him about his situation, the Imam tells him, لا تنقض اليقين بالشك. 4 words in Arabic. لا تنقض اليقين بالشك. Do not negate certainty with doubt. See how simple the law is? If you have previous certainty, don't negate it with a doubt. If you start doubting that certainty, do not negate that certainty. You can extract thousands of laws from this one principle, my dear brothers and sisters. I'll share with you a few quick examples. So one very small, simple application, you can apply it to the law of ablution and wudu and tahara. So let's say at 12 p.m., you definitely did wudu. Now it's 4 p.m., 5 p.m. You doubt whether you invalidated the wudu or not. Did I sleep? Did I go to the bathroom? I don't know. Maybe I did, maybe I did not. But I do know that I did wudu at 12 p.m. What does this law state? Do not negate certainty with doubt. This law states, don't negate your previous certainty. You are certain you did wudu, but you don't know if you broke that wudu. You have a doubt. Assume yourself to be on wudu, you can pray now. See how this law is beautifully applied? Another application some scholars have used to determine some foods to be halal using this law. One of the requirements in Islamic law for a fish to be halal is for it to die outside of the water, not inside. If you see a dead fish floating on water, it's not halal for you to eat it. It must be captured and taken out alive for you to be able to eat it. Okay, you go to the market, non-Muslim market, and you buy fish. How do you know this fish died inside the water or outside the water? So what evidence do you have that it's halal? Some scholars say we can use the law of continuity here, right? This law don't negate certainty with doubt. This fish right now that you buy from the market, you have certainty that one day it was alive when it was in the water. But you don't know at the moment of taking it from the water, was it dead or was it alive? You have certainty it was alive one day. Continue that certainty until the moment of taking it from the water. Do not negate certainty with doubt. I doubt at the time of extracting it from the water, was it alive or dead? Continue that previous certainty, and this proves that the fish is halal. See, that's one application here. Another application is adala. You know, in Islamic law, there are conditions for a witness, or let's say a prayer leader. A witness who goes and testifies in court must be just, must be known to be pious and upright. Or for you to pray Salat al-Jama'ah, you cannot pray Hayyallah behind anyone, right? You have to pray behind someone who's just, adil, upright and righteous. So let's say your friend was righteous. You know that. You have previous certainty. But you have not seen your friend for a month or two. So you start having doubts. Is my friend still righteous? Can I pray behind him today or no? Can he be a witness to witness this divorce case, for instance, or no? I don't know. What does the law of continuity say? Consider him to be just. Because you know that a month ago he was just. You have certainty. Now you have a doubt. Is he just or not? The Imam says, do not negate certainty with doubt. Subhanallah. One small law that the Imam gives to his companions, today, 13 centuries later, scholars are able to extract thousands of rulings from this law. You see how the Imam ﷺ educated his companions on the path of scholarship? This is in the legal field. Now, when you go to theology, the belief system, the Imam had students who specialized in that field. One of those students, his name is Hisham ibn al-Hakam. Hisham was the top debater of his time. If you wanted to debate at Imam al Sadiq, first try Hisham, right? If you can basically achieve victory over Hisham, then think of debating at Imam al Sadiq. The Imam would teach him theology. And by the way, Imam al Sadiq, normally he would have debates with atheists. Sometimes he would be in Masjid al-Haram for the Hajj, and then atheist would come and he would debate the Imam ﷺ. The Imam always gave the atheist that opportunity. You don't find the Imam being rigid and extreme and saying, you atheist, why are you in the masjid? You have to be kicked out of the masjid, you najis atheist. I'm not even going to speak to you. No, my dear brothers and sisters, that's not the attitude of Imam al-Sadiq. The Imam sometimes would be in tawaf. Imagine he's doing the ibadah, the ritual of circulating around the Kaaba in the holiest place. And an atheist comes, he has questions, he has objections, the Imam would address it for him. Sometimes the Imam would say a few things in tawaf, sometimes he'd tell him, just wait for me, let me finish my tawaf, and then I'll have a debate with you. Read those debates between Imam al-Sadiq ﷺ and the atheist. They are truly fascinating, my dear brothers and sisters. In one of those debates, an atheist comes to the Imam shows him proof after proof, but the guy was stubborn. He would not accept. He would stubbornly reject. By the way, many of them would become believers in God after these debates, but sometimes there were some of them, they were stubborn. So the Imam ﷺ challenged this particular atheist. He challenged him. The Imam told him, I have a question to pose to you. If what you say, that there is no God, which is of course not possible, but for the sake of argument, if we assume there is no God, I spent my life worshiping God, and you spent your life rejecting God. When we die, we're equal, right? I become dust, you become dust. What's the difference between you and I? Did I lose anything by worshiping God? No. You, the atheist, you say there's no God, no akhirah, no hereafter, nothing. You die, you become dust. Okay. I spent my lifetime worshiping God. You did not. Now that we're dead, we're equal. There's no difference between us. We're both dust. But if there is a God and he has a system, I spent my life worshiping God, I will be saved. God will honor me. And you spent your entire life defying God and rejecting the signs of God. What will happen to you? That atheist started to shake. My dear brothers and sisters, this argument today in Western philosophy is known as Pascal's wager. Basically, Pascal was a scholar and he came up with this argument way after Imam al-Sadiq ﷺ. Subhanallah. Christians have used this argument throughout history, but Imam al-Sadiq 13 centuries ago, he is the source of this argument. And if you think this is an ancient argument that no longer works, think twice, my dear brothers and sisters. Years ago, I was flying back from Canada. I was in Halifax for the month of Ramadan. I was on the plane, and this Canadian lady, very educated, she had a PhD, she saw my religious attire, so she started asking me questions about Islam. She grew up as a Christian, but she had a lot of doubts about God's existence. So she no longer believed in God. So she asked me about the concept of God's existence. Why is there evil in this world? So I showed her many proofs, and she wasn't stubborn. She was accepting those proofs. One of the proofs, the final proofs I told her, was this argument. I told her, look, if we die and there's nothing, I've not lost anything, we're equal. But if there is a God and he has a system, and I tried to follow that system, I'll be saved. But you rejected that system. What will happen to you? She started to shake. She started to cry, my dear brothers and sisters. This is in the 21st century, on an airplane. She started to cry. She said, I'd be doomed. I'd be in big trouble. I told her, then what does the intellect tell you? She said, my intellect tells me to believe in God. SubhanAllah, see? And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam teaches us this beautiful argument 13 centuries ago. Read these beautiful debates. There's many, hundreds of them. In another instance, in another example of the debates between Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam and the atheist, is that an atheist comes to him. The Imam tells him, you're an atheist, you don't believe in God? He said, yeah, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in a creator. So the Imam told him, so what are you? Are you created or are you not created? He said, no, I'm not created. The Imam alayhi salam said, okay, I'll ask you a question. If you were created, how would you look like? The atheist started to look on the ground. He put his head, he lowered his head. He started to think out loud with himself. If I were created, I would have a physical body. I would have length, width, height. I would have texture, color. Yeah, these are all the specifications of a created being. He started to shake. And that one question, the Imam answered him, subhanAllah. The guy claimed, I'm not created. The Imam says, okay, you're not created. If you were created, how would you look like? Look at yourself. You have all the indications of a created being, right? If you were created, how else would you look like? This is proof that you are created, that you have a creator. Sometimes when they would be presented with these arguments, they would say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna jaddaka Muhammadan Rasulullah, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Truly the Imam alayhi salam was a source of guidance, my dear brothers and sisters, for everyone. And remember, the Imam dedicated a lot of time to the natural sciences as well. Astronomy, biology, mathematics, physics, chemistry. The Imam educated a generation of scholars and scientists who learned these studies from him. Let us appreciate this amazing Imam that we have, my dear brothers and sisters. Go and read about the life of the Imam. Read the hadiths of the Imam. Enlighten your mind and heart with the knowledge of Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. Now, despite all of his knowledge, my dear brothers and sisters, with all this knowledge, you find that the Imam was at the peak of humbleness. You know, there are some people, when they feel like they're the top scholars, right, in their field, it's naturally for them to feel arrogant and proud. You know, as they say in Arabic, shaif hadr, right? But not Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. Even though he was the foremost teacher in his era, and Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam was at the peak of humility, at the peak of humbleness. And this hadith by one of his companions, Mu'alla, tells us how humble Imam al Sadiq was. One day, according to this hadith, Imam al Sadiq was praying in the masjid of the Prophet Mohammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the city of Medina. A man came into the masjid. This man was a pilgrim. He had come to the Hajj, so on his way he stopped in Medina. The man came to pray inside the masjid. After he finished his prayer, he realized that he was missing his belt. Himyan in Arabic, that's what it was called back then. Now, mind you that back then, there were no wallets, paper money, right? So you carried the golden coins with you. How do you carry them? In a belt. It was a very wide belt that they would carry with them to store their money and their valuables. The guy lost his belt. So he came back into the masjid. He didn't see anyone but Imam al Sadiq. He was the only one at the masjid at the time, in the masjid at the time. So naturally, you know what this man did? He accused Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam of stealing his belt. Where's my belt? There's no one in this masjid other than you, indicating that the Imam took it from him. Look at the akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt. The Imam alayhi salam told him, how much are you missing? How much money was in the belt? He said 1,000 dinars, 1,000 golden coins. That's a lot of money. The Imam called on one of his companions. He told him, go, I have stored some money somewhere. Go and bring me 1,000 dinars. He brings him the 1,000 dinars. He gives it to this man. End of dispute, end of accusations. The man takes the money. He's leaving the masjid. He saw his belt at the door of the masjid. He had come probably to do the wudu or use the bathroom. So he took off his belt. He found his belt at the door of the masjid. He just forgot about it. And the money, the 1,000 dinar, wasn't there. Now imagine, you've accused such an honorable man, and now you've discovered that you were wrong in your accusation. So the man felt ashamed of himself. He came back to the masjid. He told him, oh Ja'far, I'm so sorry. You did not steal my belt. I found it. Here, take back your money. The Imam alayhi salam said, we come from a family. When we give something to someone, we never take it back. I'm not taking back. My dear brothers and sisters, go around the entire planet. Can you find such akhlaq? This is the akhlaq of Al Muhammad. The man accuses you wrongly. The Imam doesn't take it personally and make a fuss about it. Okay, yalla, end of dispute. Here, take your money and go. And now the man comes back to bring back the money. The Imam says, no. If I give something, I'm not taking it back. Where can you find such generosity, such mercy, such affection? The Imam looked at people not as objects, subjects, right? No, the Imams looked at people with love, with compassion. And we, my dear brothers and sisters, we claim to be Ja'faris, to be followers of Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. Are we carrying this akhlaq in our society? When we're presented with a situation like this, do we react like Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam would react? We should try. Obviously, we cannot be as good as the Imams, of course. But we can try 10%, 20%, 50%, 80%. Keep these stories in your mind, my dear brothers and sisters, not because they're just nice stories. Keep them in your mind so you apply them in your everyday life. This is the akhlaq of Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam. But my dear brothers and sisters, Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam experienced a lot of persecution. When the Abbasid government rose and they solidified their power and their base, they grew concerned about Imam al Sadiq because they knew Imam al Sadiq had a lot of popularity. He had a lot of influence. He's the foremost teacher of his time. And so they persecuted Imam al Sadiq. First, Abu al-Abbas al-Saffah came to power as the Abbasid caliph, and then his son al-Mansur al-Dawaniqi. Al-Mansur was very vicious, very anti-Ahlul Bayt, very hostile to Al-Imam al-Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi. And so we find Al-Mansur persecuting Al-Imam al-Sadiq. Many times he would summon the Imam alayhi salam. At night, they would ambush the house of the Imam, drag him, arrest him. They would take him out barefoot and they would take him to the palace of the Khalifa, humiliating him. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam had so much patience. In fact, one time, even, my dear brothers and sisters, they set his house to fire. They came in at night, they set the house to fire. The next day, one of the companions of Imam al Sadiq comes to visit him, and he sees the Imam is very sad. He's crying. That man looked at Imam al Sadiq. He told him, Imam, why are you crying? You should be more patient. You, the family of Ahl al-Bayt, you've always experienced tragedies. Why are you crying? The Imam alayhi salam said, last night, when they set my house to fire and the fire was spreading in the corridor of the house, I saw the women and children running from one room to another room. And that scene reminded me of Karbala, when my aunts and the women in Karbala would be running from one tent to another tent when the tents were set to fire. That scene of Karbala is what makes me cry. I'm patient, but when I think of Karbala, I break down, I cry. So we find that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, whenever he would go through a tragedy, he would vividly, my dear brothers and sisters, remember the tragedies of Karbala. And that's a lesson for us. If you go through a difficulty, the Imam says in another hadith, think of the tragedies of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Cry on the tragedy of Imam Hussein. This strengthens you, inspires you. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was summoned numerous times by the evil caliph of his time. And then finally, Al-Mansur al-Dawaniqi, this evil Abbasid caliph, he came to the idea, to the conclusion that I have to kill this man, because this man is becoming more and more influential and popular, and people are flocking to his guidance and knowledge. And so finally, they put poison in the food of Imam Ja'far ibn Mohammed al Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi. And it was on the 25th day of Shawwal, like 2 weeks ago. Now we're in the Qa'dah. On the 25th day of Shawwal, Imam al Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi was martyred. He died from poisoning as a shaheed. And he was buried in the Baqer. He is the last Imam of the Imams of Ahl al-Bayt to be buried in the Baqer, in the holy city of Medina. Salamullahi alayk, ya Mawlana, ya Imamina, ya Ja'far ibn Muhammad al Sadiq. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the ziyarah and the shafa'ah of Imam al Sadiq. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to illuminate our hearts and minds with the words of Imam al Sadiq, with the wisdom, with the knowledge of Imam al Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi. My dear brothers and sisters, now we will open the floor to addressing any questions that you have, and we'll start the Q&A session with as-salati ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for that beautiful lecture, Sayyid. So again, everyone.
Assalamu wa rahmatullah. Thank you.
No problem. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the comment section. We have one about Quranic verses. The actual verses weren't put, but the numbers were. So you let me know if we should read them. Can you explain the verses 76 to 77, chapter 6? Why did Ibrahim state this? And then there's also another one from the same person for the Quran. The verses 15 to 16, it states, did harm to himself in regard to Prophet Musa by attacking the Egyptian. Was this a mistake?
So let's go back to the first one. You said, what was the number of the chapter?
It was verses 76 to 77, chapter 6.
Okay, so let me just pull that up now. So that's Surah Al-An'am, verses 76, right?
Yes.
Okay. So over here, فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلُ رَأَى كَوْكَبًا قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ قَالَ لَا أُحِبُّ الْآفِلِينَ. Okay, yes, I remember this conversation between Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and his people. So basically, my dear brothers and sisters, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam lived in a society of idol worshippers. They worshiped the idols. and sometimes they would worship objects. Some people worship the sun, some people worship the moon. And they would claim that they are their creators and their lords and their gods. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was very big on Tawheed. He came to his people to demonstrate to them that you worship the one God, Tawheed. So Prophet Ibrahim is now having a conversation with them, a rational conversation with them, to demonstrate to them that nothing, no object in this universe can be God. Because when you put God in an object, you limit God. If I say the sun is God, the moon is God, okay, the sun is huge, but in the end it's limited. It's an object. It has a position. It's bound to space and time. It cannot be God. The sun is there. It's not somewhere else. So Prophet Ibrahim wanted to demonstrate that to them. In trying to demonstrate that to them, he used a type of logic that's psychologically effective. So he told them, okay, look at the moon. Let's assume the moon is God. It's powerful, it's big, right? It's in the sky. And on a full night, you can see the beauty of the moon, because there were people who worshiped the moon. Prophet Ibrahim says, okay, this moon is so big, yallah, let's take this moon as a god, let's worship it. Then the moon set. Prophet Ibrahim said, wait a minute, the moon just set, he's gone. The moon is gone. How can the moon be my Lord? When it's so weak and limited, it fades away. If the moon was God, it should be ever present. It should always be with us, guiding us and controlling the universe, right? So he used this logic to psychologically show them that the moon cannot be God. The moon is created itself. Then he transitioned to another argument. Some people said, no, we worship the sun. Prophet Ibrahim says, okay, you worship the sun, yallah. The sun is even bigger, right? It's more powerful than the moon. Let's worship the sun. He's sarcastically saying it. He's saying it in an ironic way, of course. He's not literally telling them to worship the sun. Then the sun set. Prophet Ibrahim said, wait a minute. I thought this was our Lord. But it set. It's gone. It's limited. When it sets, that means it's limited. It cannot be God. So this is the type of logic that he used with his people to train them to think properly, to look at the moon, to look at the stars, to look at the sun, and to rationally come to the conclusion that it cannot be, a God. And by the way, this is a very effective means of debating others. Sometimes if you're trying to convince someone, they're stuck on an idea, and it's the wrong idea, right? You could come out in the beginning and say, look, this is wrong, khalas. This is disbelief. This is wrong. This is incorrect. Maybe the person is not willing to listen to you. But if you demonstrate to your friend why their logic is flawed, they'll accept it from you. And the way to do it is tell your friend, okay, you believe in this path, yallah, let's take this path. Act as if you're willing to embrace what he's saying. And then show them the flaw in that path. Then they'll be willing to accept your words. Because like, okay, she's trying my method, but obviously it's not working. Sometimes have you seen kids, they're stubborn with something, and they're trying to force something, to work or to do something. Now you as a parent can tell them, Baba, this is not gonna work. They may not listen. Sometimes I'll sit with my child, okay, let's try this. Let's do it your way. After a few minutes, the child is gonna say, you know what? This is not working, right? It's more effective that way. So this is how we address those verses in this beautiful chapter. Any follow-up questions about this verse before we move to the next one?
No, but I guess, what was Prophet Ibrahim's father's job? Somebody asked. And then we can move on to the next one.
Okay. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was young, by the way, the name of his father, his biological father, was Tariq. That's his name, according to our hadiths. When Prophet Ibrahim was young, his father passed away. So Prophet Ibrahim grew up as an orphan. Who took him in his care? His uncle, Azza. He married his mother, and so he became his stepdad, his stepfather, and he raised him. And in Arabic, the one who takes care of you and raises you like a stepfather is called ab, is called a father. So his uncle Azam, he was a mushrik, and he died as a pagan, but not his own biological father. His biological father was a believer. I don't know exactly what his job was. I've not seen a hadith that tells us what his father would do. And he never really lived with his father because he was young when his father died. So he grew up with his uncle. Then he started debating his uncle and telling him, my uncle, the path of idol worshipping is wrong. You need to set that aside. But his uncle was very stubborn and he was not willing to believe.
Thank you. So the next one is in chapter 28, and it's verses 15 and 16. And it states that did harm to himself in regard to Prophet Musa by attacking the Egyptian. Was this a mistake?
Correct. So let's quickly look at the circumstances of what happened. Prophet Musa alayhi salam was raised by the Pharaoh and his wife Asya, because they took him as a baby from the river, and so he grew up with them. But Prophet Musa was a believer in God. So one day he was outside of the city or around the city, walking, passing by, when he saw an Egyptian fighting one of the Bani Israel. Prophet Musa, he comes from the Bani Israel. The children of Israel, they were initially in Palestine. Then they had to go to Egypt. When they were in Egypt, the Pharaoh and the ruling elite enslaved them. They treated them as second-class citizens, right? So they were always marginalized, oppressed. So one day, Prophet Musa is passing by. He sees an Egyptian fighting with who? With one of the Bani Israel. So naturally, Prophet Musa wanted to defend that person. Not just because he comes from his tribe, but because he was being oppressed. That guy was being unfair to him. So Prophet Musa comes to stop the fight, and he tells him, look, you are oppressing that person from Bani Israel. You can't do that. Now the Egyptian was feisty, and Prophet Musa wanted to protect that innocent guy. So it became physical. Sometimes when you're trying to stop someone from bullying, you're trying to physically restrain them. So Prophet Musa tried to physically restrain this person. In doing so, he accidentally hit him on his head in a way that killed him. So remember, number one, the guy is an aggressor, right? He was coming to beat up an innocent member of Bani Israel. Prophet Musa sees the act of injustice. When you see an act of injustice in the street, you can't just, walk by and say, it's none of my business. No, you have to save the innocent. So he comes to save the innocent, but that guy was aggressive. He was aggressive. He was being physically violent. Prophet Musa, mashallah, was strong. He had good muscles. He tried to restrain him. Now, in the process of restraining him, the guy, was hit. Prophet Musa did not intend to kill him. He just wanted to stop him. But as a result, he died. So Prophet Musa never committed a sin. In fact, he was fulfilling his moral obligation of defending the innocent. But it happened so that the guy died. So it was accidental. It was not something deliberate. But yes, the people of Fir'aun, they considered this as a crime. Oh, Musa killed one of us, and he was defending one of those low ones from Bani Israel. That's why he had to flee the city. So he did not really make a mistake, between him and Allah. He did not do anything wrong. It was not intentional. But his society considered it a mistake, meaning they considered, his involvement in that fight as, something unacceptable to Fir'aun. Because Fir'aun, this is how he thinks. You should protect my people, even if they're oppressors. You should never go inside with the Bani Israel. So that's basically what happened.
Okay, another question that we had is, Sayyid, is it true that Imam Ja'far discovered blood circulation and the 4 elements?
Yes, my dear brothers and sisters, if you look at the works of the companions of Imam Ja'far al Sadiq alayhi salam, you find, for instance, Imam al Sadiq, when he talks about the body, the biology, the different functions of the body, the liver, the kidney, the spleen, right? You find that the Imam alayhi salam talks about the circulation of blood in the body. At the time, especially in Arabia, people did not have a proper conception of the circulatory system of the body. And so Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam is credited with being the one who actually shed light on the circulation of blood in the body. And once his companions wrote this in their works, later this was taken to parts of Spain, to parts of Europe, and that really accelerated modern medicine, because there were many scientists who were looking at these works, and this helped them better understand how the body functions, better understand the circulation of blood. So yes, that is true. We have hadiths from the Imam alayhi salam in which he does talk about that. Also the elements, right? The Imam alayhi salam talks about the 4 main elements. Jabir ibn Hayyan has chapters and chapters dedicated to this. Other companions of the Imam also document that we went to an Imam Ja'far ibn Mohammed and he taught us the natural sciences and he spoke about the 4 main elements. And this is just a drop from the ocean of the knowledge of Imam Ja'far al Sadiq alayhi salam. There's an interesting book. I don't know if it's translated into English. I've seen the Arabic version. Maybe it's translated into English. But basically the book is how Western scholars and scientists have come to know Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam al-Sadiq kama arafahu ulama al-gharb. It's a fascinating book. It mentions these details. Like, what are the theories that the Westerners took from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam?
Okay, our next question is a little long, I would think. Was Ismail, son of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, designated as an imam by his father but passed away in his lifetime? Was there a change that, why was there a change that Imam al-Qadhim became the next imam instead?
So Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, his eldest son was Ismail, right? After Ismail, he had other sons. One of them is Abdullah. One of them is Imam Musa al-Kazim, who was the 7th imam. So the eldest son was Ismail. Ismail died during the lifetime of Imam al-Sadiq. So Ismail died, then later Imam al-Sadiq passed away. Now, people were under the impression that the eldest son is the one who's chosen by God as an imam. See, people had this mentality. And so when Ismail was alive, there were many people who were under the impression that after Imam al-Sadiq, Ismail would succeed him to be the next imam. Now, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, for a number of reasons, he did not come out openly and say, no, this is not the case, right? He would say to some of his special companions who the imam after him is, but publicly the imam would not comment. So it seemed like, in the eyes of people, it seemed like Imam al-Sadiq, approved this common perception that Ismail is going to be the next imam. So Ismail dies. After Ismail dies, people were like, okay, he cannot be the imam. How is he the imam if he dies during the era of his father? How can he succeed an Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam? So after that, it became clear that Al-Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam is the next imam. And the imam had written his name in a will. So it's not that Al-Imam al-Sadiq changed his plans. Allah chooses the imams before they're even born into this world. But Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he was low profile. Remember, at the time, there were many enemies of Ahlul Bayt. The Abbasids wanted to kill the progeny of Imam al-Sadiq. So the imam was very careful. He never went openly and said, my son Musa ibn Ja'far is the next imam. Because there was so much persecution, they would have killed Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. So people were under the impression that Ismail, because he's the eldest son, is going to be the next imam. The imam pretty much didn't publicly comment on that. He let the people think that. Then Allah made it clear when Ismail passed away. So that's how we can present a brief overview of the situation.
Thank you. And before our last question, I just want to remind everyone, check the YouTube video, subscribe and like, and we're also going to be putting down this video. And then inshallah, we will see you the next time for our lecture. And our last question is, what is the most important book that has most of his knowledge? Thank you.
Which is the most important book that has most of the Imam's knowledge? So there is a very interesting encyclopedia. Of course, it's in Arabic. So if you don't read Arabic, unfortunately, you know, you won't have the opportunity to directly benefit from this encyclopedia. Basically, it's an encyclopedia published in Qom, Iran. It's about 60 volumes. Last time I checked, they were adding new volumes, but it's 60 volumes. It's called Mawsu'atul Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam, the encyclopedia of Imam al Sadiq. 60 volumes, my dear brothers and sisters, containing the knowledge and the teachings of Imam Ja'far al Sadiq alayhi salam. Just imagine, 60 volumes. Each volume is like 300, 400, 500 pages. That's the size of content that I'm talking about. So, you know, this encyclopedia is basically the best I've seen in gathering everything about the Imam. You know what he said about the religious sciences and Islamic law, Quran, theology, natural sciences. It's very fascinating. Now, if you want something shorter than that, there's a book called Al-Imam al Sadiq alayhi salam, Min al-Mahdi ila al-Lahd. Al-Imam al Sadiq, from the cradle to the grave. I'm not sure if this has been translated yet. I know this series, From the Cradle to the Grave, is being translated by some translators. But basically, this is a very good book that gives you an overview of the life of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and some of his, you know, hadiths, some of his knowledge, some of his debates. So that's also another book that I would recommend. If you go to alislam.org, al-islam.org, and then go under the section of, you know, the Imams and then Al-Imam al-Sadiq, you will find articles and books about Al-Imam al-Sadiq. There are some very good sources there, all in English. So I recommend going to the site and knowing more about the knowledge of the Imam alayhi salam.
Okay, Sayyid, that's all we got for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my dear brothers and sisters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you once again. I congratulate you on the birth of Imam al-Rida salamullahi alayhi. May Allah grant us his ziyarah and shafa'ah, illuminate our hearts and minds with his knowledge and wisdom. Stay safe. May Allah protect you and your families. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.